Mass shootings, spy balloons, and Russian war crimes heavily feature this week. And the Informer's North American and European correspondent, Michael A. Chabon, has all the news. Joining us once again is our North American and European correspondent, the aforementioned Michael A. Chabon, all the way from Canada. Welcome, Michael.
Michael Ray, thank you.
Now, the first object that was attributed to Beijing, what is it now, and what are these new ones we're talking about?
Well, it basically started, it's actually a very interesting story because this is something that happened over Canada. So if you look at the time frame as it is, on February the 10th, NORAD, which is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, identified an object entering Canadian airspace at 40,000 feet. Now, 40,000 feet and 35,000 feet, that's commercial aircraft level. So that is of interest. On Saturday, February the 11th, what was described as a cylindrical unidentified object triggered the U.S. and Canadian NORAD jets to scramble. So those two F-22 jets from the U.S., two F-18 jets from Canada, and a C-140, which is a very large cargo plane, were dispatched. And basically the instructions was first with best shot was ordered. And a US jet, an F-22, down the object at about 3:41 Eastern Standard Time, 100 miles north of the US border and just north of Whitehorse in the Yukon Territory. The Canadian Defense Minister, Anita Anand, I should say, in a very hushed press conference, delivered the news to the world, which was covered live everywhere, on every North American news station. Anand said that she was in contact with her counterpart, Lloyd Austin, as was Prime Minister Trudeau with Joe Biden. This is actually, interestingly, this is the first time that the United States and Canada have had a joint effort in NORAD. And NORAD was set up after World War II as a safety and a signal sharing intelligence group to protect North America. Now, you guys in Australia, as in Canada, the US, and the UK and New Zealand, we're part of the Five Eyes. So we share all this information. And basically, they're calling it a cylindrical object, and it's not a UFO. It has been described as a UFO because it's an unidentified flying object, but not in the sense of being an extraterrestrial element. They don't want to let on too much, but they shot this puppy down, and they're looking at it now. They've released some stuff from the one that the Americans shot down in North Carolina in the water. And it has tracking systems, it has cameras, it has telecommunications. So they suspect this is the same aspect. The one thing that pisses many Canadians off was that first element that was shot down, or I should say the third, because this one in Canada and the Yukon is the fourth. The third one that was shot down in North Carolina traversed all of this region of Canada. We never knew anything. We never heard anything. We never heard anything from our government. So it's a bit of a tick off, to say the least. But needless to say, they shot it down. Now they're looking at it. And I think someone reported there's one in Paris that just happened recently today. I'm not quite sure. And Costa Rica. So there's a heightened alerts now. The thing that was most distressing was, as I reported in my last report with you last week, was that balloon went over 150 intercontinental ballistic missile installations, etc. And anything that compromises your sovereign airspace should be shot down, because any other balloon, aircraft, or university project, they all have a homing beacon, or someone lets you know it's not mysterious and doesn't come back. So this is all very sketchy, but I think there's a message being sent to China for sure.
Yeah, and am I right in saying I've read reporting that they've adjusted the radar systems, and that's why they're actually finding them, because they don't know how many there were before because they weren't actually looking?
That's bull. Absolute bull. Consider the amount of satellites that are up there, and consider the Hubble telescope that is in space reversed. If you can read the headlines of the New York Times of a person sitting in New York, don't tell me that all of a sudden, no, it's 65,000 feet, we just started seeing balloons. That is absolutely bull. Bull, and more bull. Any type of military person that you talk to, they see a pigeon fart up there if that's what they want to see. And they know that. It's just that they haven't said anything because they didn't want to alert anybody, and was kind of like an innocuous thing. That is absolute bull cracky. They've seen it all the time. They just have decided not to let us know.
So a win for citizen journalism, where they were forced to act because thanks to
A
the
guy in
technology we have
Montana took a shot and posted it to social media. That's when it came. I'm going to write one of my reports in the Charbonne report about that when I get my new studio up and going. It is actually due to social media and some guy with a phone that triggered this whole thing. Otherwise, we never would have known anything about it.
Yeah. All right, Michael. Again, another reporting of another mass shooting in America. What's going on?
Well, on Monday, February the 13th, a 43-year-old man named Anthony Dwayne McRae killed 3 people and wounded 5 at Michigan State University. That's a campus that holds about 50,000 students. So McRae had no ties to the university, and motive is still unknown. McRae used a handgun, which is uncharacteristic of previous mass shooters, who all had semi-automatic rifles, and that was the whole thing about, they were talking about military-style rifles, where this guy had a handgun. And unfortunately, as I said, he killed 3 and injured 5. The gunman's uncle actually stated that he was a paranoid schizophrenic, and they believe that his mental condition and incapacity was attributed to the reason and potentially the root of the shooting. In 2019, McRae was charged with a felony and sentenced to a year of probation, and he had other little criminal activities, but nothing that would have hinted to this. The school security cameras captured his image, and McRae, he was relatively well covered, but he was wearing very distinctive red running shoes, and it went all over Twitter. The university, you got to talk credit to Michigan University and the police, because they were very skilled in the way they informed everybody, barricading doors, and doing all that, and handing out the description of this guy. And about, I think it was almost 3 hours after the shooting, when he was found, police kind of cordoned him off in an area, and then he shot himself in the head and died instantly. So, I mean, if you think the state of Michigan is still recoiling after the November 2021 mass shooting in Oxford High School, where 4 people were shot dead and 6 were injured. So, I mean, it's just terrible. A mass shooting is defined as 4 or more people who were shot in a single incident. And based on that definition, there have been more mass shootings in 2023 in the United States than any previous year since 2013. Some 68 horrific incidences. Finally, just to give some perspective, you guys in Australia, 2023, your population is just over 26 million, just slightly over 26 million. You have 3.5 million guns in your country. 26 million people, you have 3.5 million guns. Us folks in Canada, we're 38 million, just over 38 million. We have 12.7 million guns. And the US population, 343 million people, have 393 million guns. That's more guns than every man, woman, and child in the United States. And you wonder why there's a problem. I mean, you're not going to be able to defeat that. But unfortunately, you are going to have to barricade. Security is going to be more, locking things up more, more protective, more armed guards. It's because of the fact, it's kind of like, what triggered the whole thing, having to take your shoes off and all this, taking your belt off and all that? Because we had the shoe bomber. Remember? That shoe bomber triggered that. All these mass shootings they're going to have to fortify colleges and high schools and certain places. It'll happen in malls as well. You watch. It's going to be the fortification of anywhere that you go in public.
Yeah. In America now, we've got more guns than people, and so far this year we've had more mass shootings than days. It's just, it's a problem that those of us outside of the US, especially here in Australia, just cannot comprehend. We understand their amendment rights, the right to bear arms and everything like that, but there's got to be an answer. This whole, we can't do anything. Because
how do you stop a lone wolf, somebody who's mentally retarded, who at the time hadn't given any indication that he or she was screwed up in the head and bought a gun? Like, how do you weed that out? I mean, the scenario is, if you think that you're going to achieve something by shooting all these people, you're not leaving a legacy, you're not making a point, you're doing everything negative. You're spreading a horror, pain, disdain for you, your family's name, and everybody associated with you, and you're not making a point. But I don't know how killing someone else and thinking indiscriminately killing all these other people is going to fortify anybody's point. It's beyond me, and it's a very sad state of affairs.
Yep. And Russia, Michael, what's going on there at the moment?
So this is terrible too. Russia's been accused of taking thousands of Ukrainian children. The Ukrainian government says that roughly 13,000 children, some with living family members, have basically been abducted. So the Ukraine says it's a war crime, and while Russia claims, well, they're saving forgotten orphans. That's the way they're positioning it. And many of the cities that were overtaken by Russian forces, like the Donbass and other occupied territories, are taking children by force. It's reported that it's widespread and systemic and an organized effort. These abducted Russian children are being handed over to Russian families and adopted, and then they're going over without their own consent, without the consent or even any effort to contact the Ukrainian families. And then they have these big staged events where they give these kids Russian passports. I mean, it's some reports say that since the war's beginning, which is a year now, as you know, some 3.7 million Ukrainians and some 600,000 Ukrainian children have been taken to Russia in what's called filtration camps by Russian officials. So they search them, they go through their backgrounds, they take all their stuff, they take all their money, and they put them on trains, and they bring them to Russia and say, this is where you're living now. The UN says that they have credible accusations that in July of 2022 alone, 1,800 Ukrainian children were forcibly removed to Russia and put up for adoption. And Russia, again, states that, oh, your parents didn't want you, they don't want to talk to you, or your parents are dead, which is all blatant lies. But even Ukrainian children who are orphaned and reach the age, it's stated, of 18 can be forced to military service in Russia. It is part of the war, the Geneva Convention, that Ukrainian children cannot be adopted. They have to be adopted by families of Ukrainian origin, and every effort should be made to locate the next of kin. But it's also reported in some online forums, like I said, that if you turn 18, regardless, you're conscripted. So it's horrible. The Human Rights Watch says that it's widespread and that it's a violation of the Geneva Convention, Articles 49 and 50. And the Associated Press has said that they have substantiated. So on top of all the other war crimes that Russia has done, this is just terrible. I mean, it's been over a year, Michael, now that this has been going on. And this is unfortunate. I have to report all this sad news. It's terrible. I mean,
the world's reticence to get more involved in this. I understand we're supporting them with arms and aid and everything like that, but there's got to be a point where I understand we don't want it to escalate into a world war, but there's got to be a point where, we go a year now, we hear the reports and see the outcomes that are happening on a daily basis, and there's got to be something more than what's currently happening, I would say.
Well, Poland, Germany, France, England, Canada, the United States, we're all putting stuff in. They're now getting tanks, which they will get in about 2 months. They're getting some planes. They're getting Sidewinder missiles. The unfortunate reality is the only way to solve this is the attrition of the Russian army. They do not have the facilities. They do not have the gasoline, the men, and the talent. I mean, 300,000 conscripts were just brought up, as you and I discussed in detail. These people aren't well-trained military soldiers. These are friggin' kids who are given a rifle and told to go out there and shoot. They have very limited direction, and they're pawns. They are expendable. And, it's unfortunately, but what's going to happen at the end? You're going to have a destroyed Ukraine. And the only bright thing at the end, well, there's two bright things if you can look at it. One is that Europe has divulged itself of its need for Russian oil. But if you recall what happened at the end of World War II, the whole world felt guilty for the bombing and destruction of Germany and Japan. They were both flattened. Well, everybody put money in to try and help rebuild and redo it. And you look at where those economies are today. Where is Germany? I mean, they hold the purse of Europe for all the debt, and Japan is basically a technological boondoggle. It's not boondoggle, a fantastic scenario, Japan, Taiwan area. So let us hope then, if you look at that, if the world comes in once Russia is defeated and that's all stopped, they will all come in to help build Ukraine, and Ukraine could be the next epicenter of commerce and of European innovation. Let us hope.
We can only hope. All right, Michael, I'm going to have to leave it there. So thanks for your time again, all the way from Canada. If you haven't already checked out Michael A. Chabon on LinkedIn and his Chabon reports, I urge you to do it. It's always great value, good insights, and great watching.
You're a good man, McRae, and thank you so much to everybody at The Informer for watching. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you.